Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
Brett Fieldcamp.
It's been a long time coming. It's a little surprising that it hasn't happened sooner, but I'm glad to have you for the return of Bit Depth.
I mean, it happened. I guess it's happening now. It's the very next episode since we've been talking about me being a guest.
Sure.
So it's just that there hasn't been an episode. It's not like we've been kicking it down the road or something for too long.
No, I know, but like, it's such a funny thing that Bit Depth has sort of become this like formative part of like who I am and how I interact with our scene, if you will. And since Bit Depth went to sleep for a bit, it became this weird thing of like I've been meeting people that are really interesting that I want to get to know in this Bit Depth way that I haven't gotten to do because I haven't been doing Bit Depth. So now I get to do that with you.
Well, so tell everybody why you haven't been doing it. Immediately, I'm going to be interviewing you.
Yes. Because in 2020, I started doing full-time freelance with music and audio stuff, and it's only been more and more music and audio stuff. And whenever you start working on other people's podcasts regularly, then your own podcast starts to feel like work. And so it took a long time for that ick to wear off. And then also the willingness, right, to go, okay, I actually want to do this. To like, if you pursue something because you feel like you have to, it starts to wear away at you. And so stepping away from it from a bit helped me to appreciate it more and like come back with renewed energy and vigor and all of that. So
Yeah. No, well, and I know a lot about that, but yes. I won't jump the gun.
So then, who is Brett Fieldcamp?
Yeah. Primarily professionally, journalist. I now own, as of February this year, I now own Oklahoma City Free Press. I'm the owner, the editor-in-chief. I'm the head writer. So journalist, community, arts and entertainment reporter, and, advocate and supporter. Also the host of On the Scene on KGOU, giving you a look behind the curtains of Oklahoma's arts, culture, and entertainment worlds. Which last night celebrated the 2-year anniversary of on the air. And then in addition to all of that, which is my whole kind of professional persona, also a musician, and a musician really for even longer than I've arguably been doing any of that. So I also make music now under the name Meteorology as a kind of one man, not the kind of traditional one man band thing. It's a lot more electronic. It's a lot more, based around synths, samples, big live guitar, vocals. Everything that I've released so far online has been very long form, experimental, instrumental, and working on really kind of breaking through into a new phase that I've actually been doing live for a long time now, which is more, song oriented stuff with vocals. And it's a lot of just kind of towing both of those lines in a strange way.
Yeah. Which of these things like has your heart? Which of these like is like, this is me?
See, and that's an interesting answer for me, because generally my answer is music, but that's not to say that the writing and recording and performing music is necessarily like my kind of primary goal beyond the, I really do kind of consider everything that I do, whether it's all the journalism and all of the radio production or the music and the performance, I consider it really to all be extensions of the same thing. And so I've answered this question before. When people say, what is the singular primary driving thing behind what you do? The answer is storytelling. So that's really, since I was the youngest kid before I could really do anything else, it was storytelling. And so I still feel like, writing music, even if it's instrumental, writing nonfiction articles and news reports or radio shows, my immediate first approach into every single thing that I do is storytelling.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I very much resonate with that. I also consider myself to be a storyteller, and I think that maybe is something that people don't immediately understand in the aspect of being a creative, is that we are doing all these things. And it's why like so many people branch out into so many of the different things, that the stories happen in the music, but the stories also happen in the writing. So how did you first start? Which of these first got you?
That is, well, that's a difficult question, if for no other reason than because I have a really, really, really terrible memory from my childhood. So it's tough to say. I was raised from day one on music. My dad was the world's biggest music fan, the world's biggest, rocker. He was long hair, rode a motorcycle. So from the minute I was born, I was introduced to, classic rock, all of the modern and contemporary rock at the time. So I was born in the late 80s. So for a few years, that unfortunately meant a lot of like hair metal and 80s stuff, but then very, very, very quickly, I mean, by the time that I kind of like gained, individualized awareness, I was already absorbing all of the kind of classic grunge stuff, was raised on Alice in Chains and Soundgarden. But simultaneously to all of that, stories and storytelling and even writing were all really important, kind of vital parts of my childhood. My parents would read me stories. My mom might read me and my brother, more kind of like traditional children's books or something. My dad would lay down with us and read comics with us, so that we could look at all the pictures and he would just read through. So all the way back even to comics, which we're gloriously surrounded by in here. It's always come all together. I've never like felt any kind of distinction of one coming before another, right? Music was always kind of a conduit for language and storytelling, and language and storytelling were always kind of tools that could be incorporated into music. So, and I've talked about this a little bit before with other people that have asked me about just, sometimes people ask me explicitly, like, where did the writing start? And I have a tendency to equate that specifically to my grandmother, just because so my grandmother and I, my mother's mother, were extremely close. And she was always just a storyteller, right? So like when I was 10 years old, I would just sit around, and she's an old woman, and she would just tell stories, and I just liked to hear them and retain them and just kind of like soak them up. So, that obviously corresponds even to a lot of what I do now, of just listening to people and just kind of like trying to absorb and retain their stories and information.
Yeah. Sort of a very direct question, I suppose, but where'd you grow
up? Just down the street, basically, in Moore. Which I tell you, knowing a lot of the other questions that are about to come up, Moore is going to start playing a really, really big part in the story.
Yeah. So then I guess because of the growing up and the more of it all, first, just when do you first start playing music, like for yourself?
Ooh. Again, really tough to say. I got my first drum set when I was 5. I barely learned how to play it. I could keep the simplest beat. But then that transitioned into, in fact, my older brother, he actually kind of got invested in drums and percussion, and then just kind of like ended up just kind of taking my drum set and becoming better on it. And so then I had this idea for a long time that okay, well then he and I are going to be like a rhythm section, so I'll be a bass player. So then I got a bass and kind of started learning some root note stuff and very quickly started understanding that, unless you're already really adept at it in some way, you're probably not going to develop much as a songwriter just playing bass. And so then all of a sudden I started realizing that I wanted to be writing my own songs. And at that point, you just kind of say, well, then I need an actual 6-string guitar and I need to learn how to play it. So then by the time I got my first guitar, I want to say was 13. I want to say it was my 13th birthday by that point. But all through before that, I had been, kind of gradually picking away at trying to figure out how to play music. And even well before that. So for the first 5 years before I got a real drum set, I was making fake drum sets out of every single thing, and not just pots and pans, everything. My grandmother loved Quaker Oats oatmeal, and those little, like, you could still make like a Octobon like Rototom setup out of those things. So.
That's actually a pretty early start, I would say, like relative to other musicians around. Do you feel like that like really benefited you? And it sounds like also your parents were very supportive to give you these things from early on. So.
Absolutely. Benefited me, maybe. I've always been very conscious of the fact that I have a kind of differently, strangely circuitous route through music, because again, I was raised almost exclusively on heavy rock music. And for as much as my dad loved all kinds of rock music, his favorite band in the world was Styx, which I very quickly learned as a child was a goofy, uncool band. But for as much as he liked that, he also loved full metal. So from a very, very young age, when I was 4 and 5 years old, my favorite band on earth was Manowar, which it turns out is another exceptionally goofy, dorky band.
But whenever you're that little, that's great. That's epic.
Very, very heavy. In fact, actually talking even about storytelling and music kind of being an incorporation into it, that was one of the very first things that really struck me about, it's like the second Manowar album has this like Viking narrator that's telling this whole kind of narrative story. And I was so immediately taken by the narrative potential of music, which again, we'll likely circle back later, but I know I had this very strange, different route through it because I was raised on exceptionally heavy and harder edged music, and over time had to learn to develop a taste for softer music. And practically every single other person that I know was like raised on folk and country music or something by their parents, and over time like found this way to rebel through heavier music. I almost, like, by the time I get to my teenage years, I almost felt like I was rebelling by starting to really embrace ambient music and folk artists and that kind of stuff. But in terms of even just starting out so young in music, I think what's interesting about it is that music was kind of introduced into my life as something that a person can do before I had maybe developed and locked in a taste in music for myself. So the encouragement to do it and the belief that it's something that a person can just do came to me separately from believing that it had to be done a certain way. And so I feel like I've kind of always juggled that a little bit. So.
Well, that's really good because it sucks going into music with this idea of doing it the right way. And so I'll seg into more of these intentional questions here, but when did you know, or was there even a moment when you knew that like, oh, I have to be this storyteller, whether it's through writing, whether it's through music?
If there was a singular moment, then it would have been at whatever point I formed a level of kind of consciousness or cognition about myself, right? It's actually something that's come up even kind of recently in some conversations. In my radio show, for example, On the Scene on KGOU, Thursday evenings and again Friday morning. One of the very, very consistent running themes in that show has become speaking to all of these other creative people from around Oklahoma that have these very strange kind of diverging trajectories. And a lot of the time it's people that start out on one path and have really dedicated a lot of time and energy to being on this one kind of particular creative or professional path, that they find themselves completely detouring into something that ends up being this real kind of calling for them. And I find it so interesting that is so many of the stories of people that I tell on the show, because my experience is 100% the opposite direction. My entire life, since I've ever been aware of myself, I've never wanted to be anything at all but a writer and a musician. I've never had any ambition to be literally anything else at all. The closest other things are, for a while, I considered going to culinary school just because I like to cook so much. And then very quickly realized if I like to do it, I probably shouldn't go to school and have people tell me I'm doing it wrong. And then because of, jobs and bills and stuff, I ended up kind of entirely on a lark, spending 10 years in the liquor industry. But simultaneous to all of those things, never stopped writing and never stopped music. It's the only actual ambitions I've ever had. So it's been my entire life for as long as I can remember.
Amazing. You mentioned this sort of the specter of adulthood and paying bills and stuff. Has that been a concern, or that? I mean, I feel like every creative has to go through that sort of thing of like, if I'm going to do creative things, there sure isn't a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's something that comes up a lot for me recently, and it especially has maybe in the last few years, and even kind of taking over and now actually running a company that platforms young writers. People will ask me a lot of the time, man, I hate my job. I'm so tired of this. I wish I could kind of do something that you do. And people, how do I get into writing? How do I actually get into writing professionally and make money? And I tell everybody, well, if you want to do that right now, you figure out time travel and build a time machine and go back 15 to 20 years, and then you grind at it for practically no money, in your spare time with whatever other job is paying the bills, and you build it up over time. So I pay every single one of my bills right now with writing, and specifically, given the nature of my jobs, with writing about our own local scene. I mean, whether that's very hard news.
Congratulations, by the way. That's a hell of an achievement.
It is. It still doesn't pay well.
No, but just to get to that point.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, kind of learning to really kind of live and really appreciate living a more maybe not even exceptionally frugal, but I've always been really good with money. I've always been good with budgeting. I tend to be pretty minimalist. I don't like owning lots of stuff. Everything that I own for the most part is records and books and musical instruments.
And then just buying a big thing every once in a while, like a whole freaking company.
Yeah, well, yes, but that was actually something, and I obviously discuss all kinds of numbers and stuff real publicly, but that was something that my predecessor, the founder of Oklahoma City Free Press, Brett Dickerson, also a Brett. We were the Bretts for a long time. We used to get emails addressed to the Bretts. When he finally decided to step down and not retire, but to enjoy his retirement, he created Oklahoma City Free Press in his retirement 10 years ago and never paid himself in 10 years. When he decided to finally step down and enjoy his retirement for real, he I'd been working there for about 5 years or so by that point. He wanted it really to go to me. So we worked out a system where, it didn't requer me like mortgaging my house or something, which I couldn't do anyway because I rent, but selling my car or a kidney or something in order to buy it. So it's something that, it's changed the nature even of how I have to approach the company a little bit, just kind of knowing that there is this other thing added into it. But being able to just pay the bills by doing something not only that I love, but something that I feel like brings me the kind of respect and awareness that I think everybody's shooting for, right? That is always, always, always fantastic, even on the hardest and most stressful and grinding days of my life, which are frequent these days. It's really, really easy to take a step back and go, okay, but in the end, I'm really just kind of writing and bringing things to people's attention. And I never, for as overwhelmed as I never get angry or resentful at the work ever. I'm always very happy about that. Which is why I also say, for the other people that really want to do it and that want some kind of insight into how to do it, it's that you have to figure out how to let the work kind of be its own reward. It's kind of like fortune cookie, whatever. But I meet so many people that want to be a writer because they want to write about the things they like. And I say, you're never, ever, ever going to be professional doing that. You have to just like being able to write, and you have to have legitimate and absolutely genuine, not just interest in everything, but like fascination with everything. And, if there's anything that I'm like, that makes me like preternaturally, built and grown for specifically the work that I do, it's that I have a tendency to be absolutely fascinated by everything. And then you kind of just have to commit to writing the way that other people want you to write for a really, really, really long time. And before somebody finally goes, oh yeah, I like what you have to say and I like the way you do things. And here's an avenue for you to just write the way you want to write.
Which might turn out to be completely different than what the person might have liked about it, but yeah.
Maybe so. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it definitely is. A lot of the time, admittedly, that's about understanding what the individual assignment needs to be, right? So I write a weekly film column and a weekly music column, in addition to all of the kind of wider arts and culture reporting that I do, in addition to all of the very, very hard news reports that I do, down to individual reporting for every homicide that happens throughout the year in Oklahoma City. Every single one of those has an entirely different approach. And that is something, especially now being the editor and as well as everything else, that's something that you do realize really quickly a lot of people have more difficulty with. People have this tendency to think that writing is writing and my voice is my voice. And that can work in some cases. It can especially work if you run a blog. But if you're writing something for a news outlet, there are levels of your voice and there are levels of, I don't think that anybody even in their daily life just has one personality or one voice, right? So it's kind of about knowing the audience. When you're a freelancer, your audience is the outlet you're writing for. They are the audience. They take your work, they mold it into whatever voice the outlet needs. When you work for an outlet, when you own one, then you start understanding what of your output has different audiences and how to communicate with them. So,
let's dive a little bit further into that, right? Like, what does journalism, capital J, I guess, look like nowadays, especially given the big scary everything of everything.
Yeah, well, and there's a number of big scary everythings when it comes to capital J journalism.
Yes.
That's a daily question for me. Running a news outlet, running a fully and completely independent news outlet that has one single owner, has no board, we're not a nonprofit. That is a lot of really strange and scary and difficult questions, because primarily Oklahoma City Free Press has always been purely textual. We don't really call it print news anymore. It's never been printed. There's never been a physical copy of anything but textual news. It's words typed out on a screen. We do shockingly, surprisingly well. A lot of people are actually very surprised to know this. Our top demographic is 35 to 44, which is wonderful. I mean, that's my own age group. And it's one that has been really kind of teetering for a lot of news demographics. That's fantastic, but they're going to continue aging, and the younger generations beneath that are going to continue kind of aging up. And the immediately younger generation does not primarily receive news and information from textual sources. They generally receive it from podcasts, which I know this is not a news podcast, but a lot of people do. I mean, even, daily news podcasts. And then maybe even the vast majority of people in that demographic and even younger receive practically all of their information and news from video sources and social media sources. So what does journalism really even look like or mean in 2026? I think that there are a lot of people, and I'm not here to be some kind of gatekeeper or arbiter of what counts as news and reporting in journalism, but there are a lot of people that seem to believe that good journalism is one person with no one to answer to but themselves, basically telling you what they believe to be true. Real legitimate journalism, if there is such a thing as quote unquote legitimate journalism, is something that is committed to confirmation and corroboration and objective facts. Okay, so in fact, actually, this is, I suppose I'm going to say something that's going to border on kind of strange or controversial. There's maybe no better show for it. I take issue often with people saying that the responsibility of journalism is to the truth. I believe that truth is something that is nebulous and malleable and sometimes entirely subjective. I also believe that truth often is about intentions, which are something that you can never actually dig to the bottom of, that somebody can kind of hide and bury forever without speaking. So there are a lot of people that say, like, well, you're just trying to get to the truth. You're trying to get to the truth of something as a journalist. I do actually take issue with that. I don't think that our responsibility in journalism is to the truth. I think it is to the facts. Facts are something that are objective and verifiable. I also don't believe that there is such a thing or can be such a thing as unbiased journalism. The very first decision that you ever make in reporting any story is determining whether or not it is important enough to be reported. Mm-hmm. And that determination alone is bias. Yeah. So once you've made that determination, once you kind of know where that falls, then your responsibility is to objectivity and factual reporting, which means things that can be confirmed and corroborated. So all that said, a lot of the news sources that people are getting so much of their information from these days, they make no real responsibility or place no major emphasis on confirming and corroborating things. And I think that is the single biggest hurdle that we're trying to get over, right? Purely emotional, purely subjective, news. It's something I talk about a lot, that there's a huge difference between a reporter and a journalist and what I refer to as a news influencer. For the most part, these are people that just sit in their house and make videos where all they're doing is telling you how to feel about other journalism that they have read. So yeah, it's a daily struggle to kind of figure out, okay, well then how does something like Oklahoma City Free Press factor into that? How do we cross over and break more into audio and video content that is going to not only reach the same people that are reaching a lot of this news influencer entertainment, but in a way that's going to kind of break through that noise a little bit to actually kind of demonstrate to people that, you can care just as deeply about something when it is handled objectively and in a way that has actually been confirmed.
Let me,
please.
And at risk of making this portion of the interview longer, it seems like there's a commitment that has been made to certain values whenever you first set out to do this thing. Because not being a nonprofit, there's no board, there's no one telling you what you can and can't say. But also because you're not beholden to anyone necessarily, there is no overarching thing that is telling you what you can and can't say. And so you are the one that has to hold on to something. And so what is that core for you that keeps you honest or objective? Yeah. Or because you are the one that has to be committing to that?
Yeah. A lot of the time that's less about principles and more about even just technique and approach, right? So I have lots and lots and lots of very deep, strong opinions about things. They will sometimes come through even in my column writing, right? If I'm writing about music and film, sometimes I will really kind of let, political opinions and things even kind of come through in that. But when it comes to legitimate news and harder reports, a lot of the time it's catching yourself and kind of walking yourself back and saying, okay, even if I believe as deeply as I can that this is true, is it confirmed, and can I demonstrate that it is true beyond my emotions and the way that I can essentially manipulate the audience's emotions to be on my side? And the way that you do that is by letting it be in someone else's words, right? So again, the biggest thing that Instagram and TikTok news influences are not doing is they are not reaching out to the people that they are reporting on and confronting them with questions or offering them the opportunity to explain themselves. That's the entire job when you are a journalist with a big giant quotation marks and capital letters. And it's different and it is scary. And I speak to a lot of elected officials, and I speak to a lot of police, and I speak to a lot of powerful people. I have found myself standing across the street from state police actions that I believed erroneously at the time in that moment to be ICE, and held up my police badge and started yelling to see if there was anybody authorized to speak to the press. knowing what has happened to a lot of members of the press in situations like that across the country. You have to do that because I can't report anything at all about what is happening in that moment unless I have the people involved in that moment explaining to me what is happening, what the actual facts are, or at least as they're going to give it to me. So that to me is the job. It's the getting people on the phone. It's sometimes standing outside of a door at City Hall and effectively ambushing somebody. And then understanding that no comment is still an answer. Understanding that there are different answers that can be held inside different offerings of no comment. But letting things be in the words of the people that are being reported on and not trying to add commentary, only trying to add context. You know, again, sometimes the context that you add will veer maybe in a direction. But then the question at every single turn always is, what is important for the public to know? And if that is your one and only singular kind of guiding principle that is above everything else, is this important for the public? Then you can usually avoid a lot of the other roadblocks, I think.
Awesome. One last question on this front, and I want to make it a quick, short thing. What's something people don't normally know about you?
Oh, God. Well, after everything that I just said, I did not go to college. I don't have a college degree. I've never been to journalism school.
Cool.
I was enrolled for one semester at community college, and I flunked out because I never went. So that does actually kind of surprise people, given my job.
Yeah. Well, at some point, the point of the university is to show you the things so that you learn the ropes and then you go out into the real world and start doing the thing. But if you just go out into the real world and start doing the thing, is that not just the education itself? So
it is, but not going to school, you don't have the same networking and opportunities. And so again, for me, it was lots of grinding. It was just kind of tracking down what might be a job and just kind of begging for it.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Changing course, and there's no good way to transition into it, but we must. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
So this, and as admittedly, as a fan of the Bit Death podcast, it's always been something that I've thought about a lot. So like I said, more Oklahoma would absolutely come back up. Moore is a famously, Southern evangelical Baptist, deeply Christian little suburb. And again, given the nature of my parents, given my dad's own kind of, inclinations, I was not raised religious really at all. I was raised from a very young age with an awareness of a concept of God that obviously was, kind of pulled and pieced together on my mother's end from Western Christianity, which is that's a specific terminology that I use all the time that I'll probably come back around to and actually talk about why. But my father was, to the best of my knowledge, probably would constitute as agnostic. And my mother was like maybe kind of a lapsed Catholic or something. My mother was raised, her father was a Mexican immigrant that came up here in the 20s or 30s or something. But from my own perspective, I never had a lot of engagement, especially really, really young. I never had practically any real deeper engagement with something religious. The older I got, the more that became strange and contentious to the people around me. And when I say the people around me, every single person from, 8 and 10-year-old kids my age that thought that it was just unheard of and unconscionable that I didn't go to church once or twice a week, all the way up to literally like my adult teachers that were really adamant that, well, why don't you? And, it came into, public school in a place like Moore, Oklahoma, has loads of religion in it. I'm lucky that I came up through public school before that became a bigger issue where they were really kind of like trying to force it more directly in. I had a lot of say whatever you want about schools in Oklahoma and say whatever you want about schools in America. I had a lot, almost exclusively, really, really great, deeply caring teachers that were incredibly informative and really formative people to my life. But because of that experience for a very, very long time, throughout my entire kind of childhood and adolescence, religion was something that I felt like I had to be contentious against. So I very quickly, as a child, became the anti-religious kid that I would argue with people. And again, as everyone can tell, I love to speak. I love to talk. I love to have conversations. And a big part of that then obviously is that I love to debate and argue. As that became very well understood, all of the other kids that at a very young age, in my opinion, maybe a concerningly young age, had become fully and deeply committed to religion, every single one of them basically took it upon themselves to try to be the one that would break through. So I was in junior high band. I did actually leave band before high school, but I did junior high band. Every single band trip was me on a bus with 30 other kids that all, to a kid, all of them decided to witness to me basically every time. We're on a bus for hours.
I just imagined the old boy wonder.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah. But don't you wish there was a God? Just like people just like throwing hammers at me. Yeah. To answer the question much more deeply and much more honestly, go back. I've spoken a lot about my father. My father died when I was very young. When I was barely, I think, 8 years old, my dad was killed in a motorcycle accident. And that obviously would have had to have informed a bit of my engagement with religion and spirituality at that point. But I already was not, right? Before that, I hadn't really engaged in a really big way. It was always just kind of a loose concept. I was, I was aware, and as a child, for a long time, as a young child, I definitely prayed every night before I went to bed, but I had no concept or awareness of religious ceremony or ritual or anything. I'd never really been to church, But my dad dies. And then even just kind of in the intervening years after that, when I'm still young into my teens, it felt like that became this they thought that was going to be the silver bullet that got through. The number of times that I heard other children say, well, but don't you wish that your father was in heaven? And I'm like, what's the age rating on this podcast?
You can say whatever you want.
I'm like, fuck you. Fuck you for thinking that you can do that you can exploit this thing that is going to be a sore subject. But something that is not acknowledged often enough, I think, in discourse around every single difficult conversation is that when you introduce difficult questions to a child, it gives them more opportunity to form an answer that feels right to them. So I was a very young child the first time that I landed on, yeah, obviously I would like to believe that. But just because I would like to believe something doesn't mean that I believe it. And I don't know that anybody ever really had an argument against that answer. However, stepping back, in kind of weird nonlinear steps, my father also died in a motorcycle accident 1 month after the Oklahoma City bombing. And that also affected a lot of things. The bombing, I was so young, again, I was barely 8 years old. And that was this really seismic kind of thing in my life as a child, because how does an 8-year-old kid that's being asked to parse all of this about God and God's love and a plan and the, mysterious ways in which they move, to say, oh yeah, but a whole bunch of children younger than you were killed by a guy because he believed that we weren't religious enough. I mean, it's really difficult. And then, my poor mother, I love her to death to this day. She's one of the closest people in the world to me. I literally was on the phone with her 30 seconds before pulling up here. But she has to come up with some way of handling 2 young boys that have just lost their father in something completely, less than a month after the other most unexplainable thing that a parent can ever try to impart to their child. So for a little while when I was young, the answer was, well, God needed somebody to help take care of all the children that were killed in the bombing. And so that's why he took your dad. And I don't know. Even when I was really young, I never believed that, I think. It was just something that felt nice to think. So all of those things kind of combined, I think it was that. I think that there was a lot of being young and being given these answers, or these even just kind of general emotional concepts that felt really nice in your ears and in your brain, but didn't really register anything deeper than that. And that kind of gave me this opportunity to question everything that felt good in my ears and my brain when I heard it, which I guess actually, now that I'm talking about it, kind of factors into journalism in a big way too, right? The older I've gotten, the more I've read, the more I've exposed myself to, again, my kind of weird reversed route that I've taken through things. I had to really, really work and struggle to allow myself back into enjoying and accepting things that are maybe overtly religious, right? I used to just consume constantly just all new music, just every day a new band and digging in. And I used to find out that a band was Christian and then be like, nope, they're gone. Don't want to have anything to do with that again. And there were a few things that broke that down. The song "In the Sun" by Joseph Arthur, which, full disclosure, tangent, Joseph Arthur has become a crazy conspiracy asshole jerk, and I don't want anything to do with that now. But the song that he wrote, "In the Sun," it's a phenomenal, gorgeous, beautiful song. Michael Stipe did a version of it that was wonderful, but maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll get into even this a little bit more. My idol in all music and creativity is Peter Gabriel, and Peter Gabriel himself did a version of the song that is absolutely devastating. But the chorus is literally just "May God's love be with you." And that took this really long time for me to parse, because I've always kind of made this distinction, the thing I say about something that feels good in my brain, but it doesn't really register in my heart, I guess is what I'm saying. The things that have probably had the most profound effect on me in my entire life, in music or art or conversation and information, are things that immediately hit me in the heart but feel wrong to my brain first, that I have to unpack that. Yeah. Those are always the things that have had the greatest effect. So later on in life, and then falling deeply in love with something like Sufjan Stevens.
Yeah.
Really, really, really made me unpack a lot of my antagonism towards religion and really come to a very different kind of conclusion about it and relationship to it. And then all of it basically comes to a head in Promethea by Alan Moore, which is, I've said for a lot of years now, probably the closest thing to a Bible that I really even kind of have in my life. So yeah, that's an incredibly long-winded answer, but the short version is complicated.
Yeah.
I have a complicated role with religion and spirituality in my life.
What is your definition of God?
That is maybe a more easily answerable thing because I have thought about this a lot. In a very, very, very broad esoteric way, God is whatever. God is the name for whatever a person believes governs the universe. And in that way, I believe that it's just as viable to use the word God for absolute chaos, right? If you believe that the universe is governed by nothing but chaos, well, then there's no reason that's not God too. If you believe that it's governed only by time and the passage of it, there's no reason. It's just the word that we've come up with, I think, for whatever governs everything. It's interesting. I've got a song that is arguably entirely about this that I have not actually released yet. I've been sitting on for the very better part of 3 years, and it's been recorded and finished. I've got it. It's on my phone right now. I listen to it constantly, and I've never released it. Maybe partially because it is really kind of nakedly vulnerable in that exact way. But I wrote the entire thing as quickly as I've ever written anything. I wrote it basically in almost as much time as it takes to listen to the song. And the lyrics just kind of fell out of it. But that is basically what it's about. Rain and sirens, the only names we'd know you by. The sun and winter, your only face we'd recognize. So, you know, it's talking to something that would be God and saying, if there is anything that governs the universe or the experience that we have, we would not have any idea at all how to recognize it, we don't have brains capable of unpacking what it even is outside of whatever it is that we feel. Right. And that's why it's rain and sirens, right? We'll get to meteorology, I'm sure, and why that's a big thing, again, growing up in Moore. But, you know, rain and sirens is comfort and warning, and it's the dichotomy. And if there's something that you call God, then the dichotomy is as good a thing as any to refer to. Yeah, I don't know. Again, complicated. It's all complicated. Yeah. That's the point of the
show. What is your view of free will?
I believe we have it, whether or not there's anything governing it. I don't believe. In fact, actually, I mean, well, hell, what's the simplest possible answer? My view of free will is The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. It's my favorite book of all time. It's literally about specifically the complexities of what counts as free will. Is it still human free will if we have no idea what's going to happen and no idea what the consequences of our actions are going to be, but something else already does? And I think the conclusion that the story comes to, and the conclusion that I would have come to, is that, yeah, we absolutely still have free will. It doesn't matter what somebody else already knows, and it doesn't even matter if somebody else is intentionally pulling the strings. We experience our decisions for ourselves freely. And I kind of don't really believe that there's anything that counts beyond what we experience. So I also believe in really wide, like, gravitational astrophysics issues of Einsteinian models of light and time, and the idea that all time effectively is light, which means that time itself is a dimension, which means that fourth dimensionally there are already consequences and reactions to actions that we have not taken yet. And in that way, I do kind of, again, maybe I just like to, maybe it just feels good in my brain that there are echoes and architectures of things that might extend in the reverse of the way that we experience them, right? That there could be things in the future that are affecting the way that we're experiencing the present. I still don't think that nullifies the experience of free will.
Yeah, cool. That is like simultaneously like one of the coolest answers I've gotten and like one of the densest.
I'm pretty good at being dense, I'll tell you that much.
I love that. I love it. Pretty pertinent to already the answers that you've given. What do you think happens when we die?
Pass. No, honestly, I cannot tell you. And to be honest, I think that is maybe the single most difficult answer I've ever had to come to in myself, because the nature of my brain, the nature of journalism, the nature of everything is I want an answer to everything. I want to have an answer ready for every question. The older I get, I think the older that anybody gets, you hope you become more and more comfortable with being less and less certain. That's essentially what I think growth is as a human being, is becoming more comfortable with being less certain. More and more, the older I've gotten, the more comfortable I've become with saying, I don't know. I don't have any idea. Nobody does. There is absolutely not a single human being on earth that can tell you what happens. There's faith and there's belief and there's comforting imagery that we can, consume. But I have no idea.
Yeah. How do you determine what good behavior is?
Oh man, this is actually the oldest answer to anything that I have. This is something, again, that I had to kind of develop as a child, because one of the things, again, there were so many, like, it was like all the other kids growing up in school in Moore were like given a script to read when they were interacting with me. The number of kids that said, well, if you don't believe that there's a God and you don't believe that there's a heaven or a hell, then why even be a good person? My answer has always been, I don't believe in good or evil. I know that that's actually something else kind of coming up. I don't believe in good or evil. I believe in courtesy. I believe that effectively everyone should be able to do whatever they want to do, but that the only thing essentially that is sacred practically in life is that everyone else should be shown the courtesy for them to do what they want to do, right? Nobody wants to have their things stolen. Nobody wants to have their face punched. Nobody wants to be shot. Nobody wants to be abused or anything, right? Those are, it almost feels reductive to say, those are very discourteous things to do. And what's funny is that I have talked about that. I've talked about the overall absolute belief and power of courtesy for so many years of my life. And then because I am such a Vonnegut fan, and because I've spent my whole life kind of parsing out Vonnegut's works so that I've always still got more to read, it wasn't until later, maybe into my early adulthood, when I read, I believe, Jailbird. And Vonnegut himself, according to like a letter that he received from a fan or something, broke everything in his entire life's work down to, Vonnegut says, yeah, I think that you could kind of reduce all of my writing to love may fail, but courtesy will prevail. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. I guess I was on the right track with this courtesy thing. So that's all I believe. I believe in courtesy.
Cool. How do we reduce the division between people?
Courtesy. More specifically, conversation. Right. So everything that I do all the time, every single thing is an element of storytelling. Everything is a conversation. You know, if it's music, even if I'm not making it with other people, if it's music I've made entirely by myself, when you allow other people to listen to it, that's conversation. That's how you reduce everything, is you allow people to talk to one another. What do I think is the problem in the world right now with the advent of social media? Is that it's everybody talking to a screen and not allowing for response back, right? It's news influencers that don't get somebody on the phone so that they can say, what do you have to say to this? And then listen to what they have to say to that. We need more people talking to one another and not people talking for the sake of everyone else hearing what they have to say. And that's probably the best answer I could give to that.
Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
No, because I don't believe in evil. I don't believe that humans are good by nature. Also, I don't know that. Well, I don't know that nature cares about good and evil, right? I think that nature cares about propagation, and that's also effectively it. I also don't know that we have brains capable of knowing what a positive consequence of our actions really is on that large of a scale. So no, not
in the interest of time, I'm going to bypass one of these. No, that's okay. What are you optimistic about for our future?
Of all the questions, that's probably the one that.
Why do you think I chose it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's weird. It kind of slaps me in the face a little bit with my own realization that I have spent so little time thinking about that lately, and that maybe I don't like that about myself right now. What I am optimistic about is that I know that things move in pendulums. I'm already seeing in younger generations a rejection largely of handing over personality and discourse to algorithms. I'm starting to see a big rejection of that, you know, and it's not just about kids trying to reappropriate something nostalgic or retro or anything like that. It's more about, I unfortunately think that my generation in particular has morphed into a bad example for younger generations. And they look at the millennial generation and start thinking, well, we don't ever want to become that. We don't ever want to hand over so much of our agency. They've started rejecting it. And they've started trying to kind of form their own platforms or even just remove themselves from, you know, internet-based or something platforms. And so I'm optimistic that future generations, and maybe even the very near future, that people will start understanding better how to engage with the technology that's been given to them in a way that's more healthy and really, really hopefully more conversational and communal.
Yeah. What makes you content?
I'll let you know if it ever happens. A job well done in like a moment, right? Mm-hmm. If I write an article, I publish it, I usually read back through it once it's published, and I think, okay, cool. I think I nailed that. I think I got everything that I wanted to say into that. And then it's what's next. So yeah, like a free 5 minutes and a job well done. Actually, much more specific, like cooking a meal perfectly. Nothing on earth makes me more content than cooking something and sitting down and eating it. And my wife saying, wow, this is really good. And me going, man, everything on this plate came out like I wanted it to. There is no feeling on earth like that. Yeah, nothing makes me more content than that.
Corollary to that, which you maybe kind of answered, but when will you be satisfied?
Kind of depends on what you mean by satisfied. I believe that I am actually satisfied right now. I believe that I do have to take a step back and I do have to acknowledge, I'm not a big rock star that's touring and selling out arenas or anything. And I'm not, the star writer for, I don't know, I used to say the New York Times or the Washington Post or something. They've all got off the damn rails. But I believe that I have the respect of my community and I feel the respect of my community. And that already is fulfilling. Other than that, because all of those feelings essentially are just kind of a job well done, actual broad widescreen fulfillment will be if, God willing, I get the moment to lay in my deathbed and think, life well done. Until that, I'm not gonna like feel ever like, okay, cool, I feel good about this. I think I can kind of stop or slow down. It's never gonna happen.
What advice do you have for people in general?
Communicate more.
Yeah.
Literally all, but there is no issue in the entire world, I honestly believe, that cannot at least get you closer to a resolution, if not fully be resolved by people just communicating more.
Yeah. And lastly, potentially most importantly, cake or pie?
Cake.
Of course, the extension to that. What's the cake?
You mean like philosophically, or you mean like just like what kind of cake?
No, whenever I asked cake or pie, you thought of a cake.
Here's the most controversial thing I can possibly say on the show. I don't really like fruit practically at all. So there are like pudding pies, like a chocolate pudding pie, I actually like quite a bit. But if I'm going to pick between them, it's going to be a really nice, fluffy, moist, probably just like a vanilla cake, light vanilla icing. I don't like all kinds of crazy, thick frostings or like weird fondant stuff or anything, but like just a really nice, simple, like a Betty Crocker or something, right? Like, I was raised, lower middle class. So, if I think of cake, I think of whatever my mom might have been able to make me. And I still love that, and there's no weird, squishy, hot fruit inside of it.
Brett, thank you so much for doing this with me.
No, thank you. Seriously, I have wanted to. I have twisted your arm just as much as you have twisted mine. So.
Where can people find you and your things?
First and foremost, freepressokc.com, where I'm the owner and the head writer. Also, KGOU.org/show/on the scene. Go to KGOU.org and find On the Scene under programs. We're about to go into our 80th episode.
Heck yeah.
They're all 5 minutes long, so they're easy to binge. And then you can follow my music on Instagram, primarily at Meteorology Music, and you can keep up with whatever it is kind of that I'm kicking around professionally at Brett Fieldcamp OKC on Instagram.
I'm so glad to finally have you here. I think it makes sense for the return of Bit Death for it to be you. But yeah, I will say my things that close out the thing. That you can find me on my things on santiagoramones.com. And I always end the show with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.